Hi everyone, Chris from BattleGoat Studios. We're into the summer months, so our development team, which is fairly small these days, is not going to be able to do a whole lot of big updates for the next little while. But I thought I could record a quick video talking a little bit more about the map editor. This has come up sort of for two reasons. One, somebody on the forums found that we have an error in the 1936 map with some battle zone, the way they were drawn. And I'm going to need to fix that. It occurred to me I could simply do a recording while I'm fixing it to help our modders have a bit more understanding of the map editor. The other thing is that there's been some requests lately around the map editor. Specifically, one of the users on Discord was wanting a better understanding of how the fill function works within the map editor. And the other thing that's also floating around while we're talking about the map editor is a few people have asked about porting Supreme Ruler Ultimate maps into Supreme Ruler 2030. Short answer, yes, it's not that difficult to do, but there's one or two quirks. So I think I'm going to try and cover a little bit of that today as well. Hopefully the video doesn't get too long. But I'm going to start by showing a little bit more of the map editor, making the one fix. It'll tie into some of the other stuff that we're doing. I am, while I work with the map editor, going to go through some of the functions pretty quick because I'm fairly certain we've done a modding tutorial, like intro to the map editor in some other videos on our YouTube channel. If you're wanting a broad understanding of the map editor, I'd say grab one of those videos because I'm going to be very focused on my task with today's video. But let's get to it. So I'm running through Steam to do all of this, just to show you that you can do it the exact same way. For anybody unfamiliar, you can right-click on the entry, go to Manage, Browse Local Files. This is going to bring up your local folder where the game is installed. And there's the exe to run the game, and there's an exe for the map editor. I'm going to launch the game for a moment, show you guys the error that I'm trying to fix. So this was spotted in the 1936 maps, or it's 36 through 42. That if I launch the game, when building the map, we use a system of theaters and battle zones, which the player can leverage some of the AI tools, and some of how the AI navigates is built around these things. A user was playing and noticed that there was a problem in Asia. So to see our battle zones, in the bottom right of the screen, second last one is the battle zone controls. And it has two buttons, one to view individual battle zones and one to view all the battle zones. If we go individually, zoom in on Japan, you can see that as I click around here, Japan has been cut into multiple battle zones. And everything's fine until we click here. Because over here in China, that battle zone definition is the same. They shouldn't be. This over here in China should have gotten a separate number. So how do we fix that? Well, we're going to have to go into the map editor. And then once we're there, I'll show you a little bit about the structure of how these are set up. Let me quit out of the game. Excuse me. So to do map editing, let me quit all the way out. When you're map editing, the map editor looks at a specific folder. I was just in the sandbox. If I look at the folder for sandbox, it has these .scenario files and the associated folders. But the map editor only reads what's in the scenario folder. So all these .scenario files, we'll see them listed when we get into the map editor. Because we have to work with these and we know our users are going to work with these, the associated folder for 1936 has already been put here. And if I go into that, it has a folder for maps, and it has the MAPX and the OOF file. These are the two files that make up a map in the game. Actually launching a sandbox has a whole bunch of additional files, but these are the two that the map editor creates. So to be able to work with this, the 1936 .scenario isn't by default in here. So I'm going to have to go into Sandbox, find SR1936.scenario. Right click and copy that, Then I'm going to go over to scenario and paste that. Oops. So now we have the .scenario file and the associated folder. The .scenario files, I believe one of our modding tutorials discusses them in more detail. I may jump in and out of the file a bit today, but I'm not going to explain it. You'll have to find the other video if you need to know those things. Okay, so I've now got the .scenario file. I can go back to the top, and this time I'm going to launch the map editor. So here is the load list, which has all the different files, all the .scenario files that it found in the scenario folder. And the SR 1936, we use some name overrides in places. That's one where this 1936, the road to war, that actually is that SR 1936 .scenario file. So if I load this, and then let's pan over to Japan, not too close in. The same controls that you have in the game for viewing theaters and battle zones, well, not quite the same, they're similar. So on the right hand side here, the second button, and my apologies, we didn't have separate graphics for everything. Any of the roughness you see in the map editor is simply because we don't have the development resources to both build games and tools, so sometimes the stuff in the tools is a little rough. But there are two sets of 3 buttons. The top one in each of these sets one is for theater, the other's for battle zone. So as I click for theater, it has 3 settings: a single theater, all theaters, no theaters, and you can just cycle through them. Battle zone gets an extra layer where you get single battle zone, all battle zones in that theater, all battle zones, all theaters, and again back to nothing. So if I do just one, we can again see that this is all a single battle zone, and they should be 2 separate. To define battle zones in the map editor, we have to go to the Resource and Info Set tab in the lower left, and down here, for any given hex, we can define what theater number, what battle zone number it is. So everything here is 1-8. If I click the water over here, we're 19-3. And the problem is that over here, it is 1-8. It should be a different battle zone number. Now, for any of the modders who are playing around with this, you've probably figured out at this point, and we've publicized that the theaters, you can go from 0 to 31. In the 2030 maps, we have used all 0 to 31 theaters. There is no more room. Battle zones, I don't remember if it caps out at 64 or 99, but checking in some of our notes, we've gone as high as like 62, which is a lot. Usually our theaters get between 25 and 40 battle zones. There's a few cases we have more than that, but usually we don't need to cut it up that far. So the question is, what number can I use to be able to know what to change this to? Because if I just changed it to, I don't know, 11, I'm likely to run into an 11 somewhere over here. So the solution to this is, maybe I should have done this when I was in the game, we've created a cheat code. It's not really cheating, it's an output. There's a few output functions. And if you want to see all of these, we've listed them on the Supreme Wiki. So on the Supreme Wiki, if you search for the page for cheats, at the bottom it also lists the various output commands you can put into the console. And the one I want to look at is, here's BattleZone. Output BZ. It'll create a list of all currently used battle zones. And it's worth noting that a number of the maps have slightly different battle zone configurations. The 2023 and 2030 map are the same, but the 1936 map is a different battle zone layout. Theaters, I think, are the same. And again, the World War I, the 1914 map, has the same theaters but different battle zones. So whichever one you're going to work with, You want to pop into the game, run this output. And I can show you what the file it creates will look like, because there's one sitting in the game files. If we go to maps, and I think it's in maps data. Yeah, battlezone.csv. I'm just going to open this with a notepad file. This is what it creates. So for every theater in the game, it tells you which battlezone numbers have been used. So now that I know that, I can go here. So 1, 8. We can't use 8. 39 is the highest number used in Theater 1. So I could start with 40. Now something I've learned from editing these is I don't just jump into the next number, because if I change this one hex, 40. But now I'm going to switch to showing all the battle zones. So 40 happens to be the exact same color as 8. So trying to repaint this right now is going to get really tricky. So I don't want to use 40. Let's try 41. Now that's kind of close to some of the other numbers. Let me, 42, 43, 45, 46, maybe, 47. Okay, I like 47. This is going to be a color that I can easily distinguish. When working in the map editor, some other comments that I've heard recently is about being able to paint, needing to paint broad areas. This is where that fill function is going to come in. So to paint on the map, you have to unlock the map, because we have a default lock, so you don't accidentally left click and change something on your map. So you have to unlock it. You also have to set which thing you're going to paint with right now. And I'm working with battle zones. So now that I've done that, I can click somewhere else and it's going to paint as I go. It is worth noting, anytime you're painting, a right click is an eyedropper tool. So I can right click here, then left click elsewhere to keep painting. You can increase the size of your, I thought that would work. Huh. We do seem to be getting some quirks with the brush sizes when I was testing some of this out recently. I'm going to end up opening a ticket about brush sizes. Once upon a time, this would have let you paint 2 hexes, well, the hex and its area of control around it. But sometimes that gets fiddly. This battle zone is small enough that, if you'll bear with me, I'm just going to repaint this all by hand. I'm trying to be careful not to bleed into another area by accident. Actually, it might be easier if I turn off borders. Actually, I'd also like to turn off the 3D models. How do I do that again? Is this? There. So turning off the borders, turning off the facilities, this means that all my color edges are just easier to track. I've worked with the map editor enough over the years that I got a pretty steady hand. The mouse cursor can sometimes feel just slightly off to one side. So save often would be my suggestion, to not get yourself caught somewhere that you've made a mistake while painting. Okay, done. I have repainted that battle zone to a whole new number. So now we're going to save this and get it ready. That I, of course, need to save a copy of this so we can send out the file with the next update. So when you're done map editing, make a save. I also suggest, before quitting the map editor, find your files, because sometimes the function of the map editor, the way it saves out, it may end up renaming a file to conform with some rules that we have about the .scenario file name will always create the .oof of the same file name. We'll show more about that after. But before I quit, I have a tendency to Alt-Tab. Let's find my files. And I want to see the file that has the time and date stamp for today, July 9th at around 1:45 p.m. So if I go to the main game, maps, there is a 1936 MAPX and OOF. But these are from about an hour ago. I needed to reinstall to make sure my files were clean. These are not the files I just saved. And that's because, like I said, the map editor works in the .scenario folder. So in the scenario folder, in the 36 folder, in its maps folder, this is the two files that I edited. I also want to point out, for anybody, sort of a troubleshooting thing, when you get really stuck with things, the map editor does make a lot of backups. So now that I've found my files, I'm going to quit and confirm. Let's say that you hadn't checked before quitting and you look in your folder and you just cannot find the files that you just finished making. The map editor, every time you quit in the root, maps, backups, auto backup Q is the quit auto backup. You'll notice, no, that's a different one. Oh, it's these two. We have a .back. These must be ones that were stored previously. So these are the two. You'll notice those have the right date stamp. So if I've lost my other ones, I could take this MEPX OOF, put them where I want them, name them the way I want them. Nothing is lost. There's a lot of backups built as part of the map editor because we ran into problems ourselves over the years as we developed the game. Right, so now I've fixed the MAPX and OOF. I need to make them usable for the core game. So I have to go into Scenario, SR 1936, Maps. These are the two I just fixed. I'm going to right-click and copy those. Now I need to go back to the actual Maps folder. These are the official files used for the sandboxes and the campaigns and everything. So I'm going to right-click and paste, replace those files. So we now have fixed maps here. And for anybody who's familiar with modding, you'll know that I now need to rebuild the caches to see this. So let's launch the game. Sandbox 36, game options, system, force recache, start. And now 36, launch. Let's test that our fix worked. Jump over to Japan. Single battle zone. It worked. Where is it? There it is. Now those are two separate battle zones. I will mention that, why does that one not get a name? Oh, sorry, I'm looking in the wrong spot. Names are down here. So battle zone naming, it is auto-generated based on the highest population city in the battle zone is the name that it gets, which sadly means that all of the all of the ocean battle zones are unnamed because there's no city, it's ocean. Yeah, so we fixed that, and you saw a little bit about the map editor, but I want to take a few more minutes and talk about some other things that might be exciting to do with the map. It's great to fix a battle zone, but a lot of you modders are really interested in doing more. In particular, people have talked about porting SRU mods or SRU, the maps that, because we only moved some of them. It's a lot of work to move them over. We focused on the main ones. So maybe you want to grab a map from SRU and use it in 2030. How do you go about doing that? Let's quit out of the game. And all the way out. And I need to grab Steam again. Because this time I'm going to go and manage browse local files for SRU. This is my SRU install folder. And I know Cold War gets a lot of discussion, and the studio is still looking at what can we do to work with the Cold War files. But I'm going to use the 2020 Global Crisis, because 2030 has a global crisis map, but it's set in 2030. Supreme Ruler Global Outbreak has a 2020 map, but it already has zombies on it. So that's one of the things we thought of, is maybe the 2020 map should come back. Let me show you how that process would start. I'll need both of my folders up here. And so there's two things I need to start. I need the .scenario file. I'm going to go into Ultimate Sandbox, the Global Crisis .scenario file. Now we already have one called Global Crisis. So here I'm going to create a copy, and I'm going to rename this one right now to call it 2020 Crisis. Oops, I had already done this earlier today when I tested my stuff. Pretend that I created this one, 2020 Crisis. This is just a copy of Global Crisis renamed. I'm going to drag and drop that into my scenario folder. Copy it here. Now the other thing we need is if we have a .scenario 2020 Crisis, then I need a folder for its files. New folder 2020 space crisis. It must be named exactly the same. And then in this folder, we're going to create a new folder called maps. Oops. And into this, I'm going to put the map files that I want to use. And I'm going to grab from from Supremeler Ultimate Maps. I think I've already made them here as well. Oh, it doesn't matter. Actually, I'm going to grab, I'm just going to grab these two, the Global Crisis 2020, MEPX and OOF. Copy them here. This is the start. I now have an MEPX, an OOF, .scenario. I can immediately edit this in Supremeler 2030. I don't need Supremeler Ultimate's files. I will eventually if I want to make the whole sandbox the same, but let's just talk about bringing the map up to speed. Okay, so now I'm going to go back into the map editor. And 2020 Crisis now appears in the list because I made a .scenario file. And when I load it, it's bringing in the GC 2020 MEPX and the GC 2020 OOF. And this is what you get, a map full of stars. And there has been a few people who've commented about this. They bring it in and they're thinking, oh my gosh, it's broken. Let me give a bit of background. This is happening because during the Galactic Ruler development, we added the nav point system to the game engine. And this meant that the maps contained an extra data point. But that data point doesn't exist in the SRU maps. So it sort of gives a bit of this garbage. The good news is fixing this requires one click. Every time you save the map in the map editor engine itself does some house cleaning steps when it saves the files. And we made sure that the engine knows how to look for this issue. And if all I do is push the Save Map button, ta-da, all the stars are gone. Now, it's also good at this point for us to talk a little bit about when saving the map, that the way the file name rules are enforced. Because this will, pushing the button created two files, an MAPX and an OOF. But the name of one of them will have changed. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to Alt-Tab back. So this is where we were editing, and we were specifically in the .scenario folder. We had created this 2020 Crisis scenario. It has the associated folder for its files, which right now is just the maps. And when I go in there, you'll notice based on the date stamp, the MAPX file, the engine doesn't care what you call the MAPX file. But the OOF, it will always save it with the same file name as what your .scenario was. There's two ways to solve this particular issue. One, in the .scenario file, we could just permanently change the OOF to be called 2020 Crisis.OOF, and we could rename it to be that. Second method, if you're just getting started, is when it saves it under the wrong file name. All I do is I grab the proper file name, Control-C that name, I delete the old OOF, and I rename this new OOF. Now they have the right file name again, and your changes will appear again in the map editor. If we had quit and loaded, it would have given us the new MEPX, but the old OOF, and you can get your stuff out of sync. But that rule is enforced that when you hit save, the .oof will get the name that your .scenario file has. There's reasons that I won't get into that it became necessary for us to enforce that rule. So that's step one about bringing a map forward. I could now attach, in my .scenario file, I could point to ORBATs, event files, leaders, all sorts of stuff, and I have a 2020 map on which I can build a sandbox or a scenario. But there's one other thing we strongly encourage if you're bringing a map from SRU into 2030. And that goes to changes we made during 2030 development around pathing. Anybody playing SRU has probably heard the comment about the St. Petersburg issue, where the AI's pathing would see all that naval path through St. Petersburg, and the AI would think, oh, that water goes so far, there must be a way through somewhere. But there wasn't, and it created bottlenecks. Development for Supreme Ruler 2030, we increased the number of theaters, changed how the theaters work a little bit, redrew some of the battle zones. A lot of those map changes were made, and they were pretty significant. The maps coming into 2030 should get the same theater and battle zone layout as what the 2023 and 2030 map use, or what 36 is using. And that sounds like I'm asking you to do a massive repaint. Don't worry. There's a one-click button to apply an existing set of theaters and battle zones. It's probably more like 3 steps, but let me demonstrate what I'm talking about. So we made these files, and just to prove it's all working, I'm going to do a quit, confirm. And now if I go into Supreme Ruler 2030, just to repeat that in maps, backups, I now actually have, where are they? So these are the backups when I did a quit. They're already there. And if I run the map editor again, and now we'll load 2020 crisis, no more stars, we're fine. Now, one of the examples I can give for the old theater layout, if I zoom way out and view our theaters, hey, I got exactly this one. So this theater goes all the way from the south of India to the north of Russia and touches oceans on both ends. This was a problem. So this theater in one of the newer maps is actually cut into 2 pieces, a north theater and a south theater. I want to bring in the new theaters. The way to do this, I want to show you on the cheats page. The trick is to use in-game, for the map you want to copy from, there's a command to output their theater and battle zone data. This output theaters, it'll create 2 files. One of them defines the theaters, one of them defines the battle zones. Let's go through all these steps. And I know I just got into the map editor, but I'm going to quit again. I need to launch the game. I'm going to use 2023, start. All you need to do is open the game. Then Control-Shift-S. Control-Shift-S gets you into the console where you can type the commands. Let me check my spelling again. All one word, output theater. I spelled that right? Yes. Enter. I haven't done this in a while. I wasn't sure. One, I'm not sure this is going to totally work because it's been a while since we've used the function. There we go. Just takes a little bit. So 60 seconds. Now I'm going to quit the game. And if I look at my game folder, maps, I have 2 new files. These files are the definition of the theaters and the definition of the battle zone. So now what I can do is go back to the map editor. 2020 crisis, load. And let me zoom out again so we can see this. One click to fix it, now that I've exported those files. So I go to the Generate World tab. This button, says import theater battle zone from file. That is now 2 theaters. All theaters on the map, all battle zones on the map are now properly configured for play in 2030. So I will simply save. And again, because I didn't fix my file name stuff, I'm going to need to Alt-Tab, Scenario, 2020 Crisis, Maps, and grab the name, dump the old OOF, rename the new OOF. We now have a map file ready for use in 2030. Now, why does it mean that porting is still difficult? Is because all we did was fix 2 files. Let's go back to the 2020 crisis, or to this, the .scenario file. Oops, I need to open that with Notepad, will be fine. So we fixed 2 files, but the CVP, we need to bring that forward, double check all its data points. The region include, if we've tweaked some of the regions we're using, the default .unit is the equipment file. There's been new equipment entries added. We probably want to go into the CVP and give them to the regions that should know them. The tech tree, there's been new techs added. We should go into the CVP for the different regions and give them their update the techs they know. The WM data, you could probably use the existing 2020 data in 2030. So not every file needs to be changed. I guess most notably would be in the CVP to account for the equipment file changes, tech tree changes. I'm just skimming the list. ORBATs, if you wanted to change what regions own. Some of the event files might need rechecking. Oh, especially if a set of events was giving specific battle zones based on coordinates, those events would need to be rechecked because we just changed a bunch of theaters and battle zones. So those are the main things. Getting the map done can feel like it's the biggest piece, but I would actually argue that the map files, they're some of the quickest things to do. It's all the associated files that make it tough to fully bring something forward. Now, we will, because I've done on this video the 2020 global crisis, we're going to keep working on some of that. You guys might see it just appear in an update at some point. We'll let you guys know. Maybe we can get a little more content added this way. Yeah. So that is for the modders for how to do porting. The last thing, and I know I've gone long, but that's fine. People can queue through the video. I had a user asking for more information on how to use the fill function in the game. Let me focus on that for a couple of minutes. So let's say that I've decided I want to build a new nation in this area of the map here. I'm going to turn off the theaters for now. A reminder for the map editor, and if you're looking for map editor instructions, we have separate tutorials on our YouTube channel on using the map editor. The F5 key will switch us from the satellite view and 3D view to the terrain view. So this is the hex squares to really see how the terrain is defined. And actually, I'll work here so I can see some other stuff. So I could unlock the map, and maybe I'm going to make a big island nation. And I'm going to start with a coast that's got some forests. So I'm going to right click for eyedropper, paint with terrain. And this is going to be a coast over here. And then we'll take a right click on this so I can left click. Actually, I want the larger brush here. Okay. So then we'll have some coast, have some more forest. I'm going to right click on plains. We're going to do a whole bunch of plains. So again, it could take a long time for me to get the total shape I want, but once I've encircled an area, the map editor does let me click on this fill button. Maybe I just want the entire center to be dense forest. There we go. We now have dense forest filled in. Now, if you're playing with the fill, I talked about the map editor making a lot of backups. Let me Alt-Tab again. Every time that you push that fill bucket button, the game engine puts into maps, backups, it makes a copy of the MAPX before you've clicked the map. Because let's say that, so I'm going to right click on the ocean, make this all ocean again. Or actually, I'll do a control test in here. Me swamp, large brush, this. I only intend to, I want to make the right side mountains and the left side, I don't know, rough hills. Right now it would work, but if I had made a mistake and left a gap somewhere by accident, then when I select rough hills, bucket, so it just made a save, and then I click, oh, what's it doing now? It paused on me. I'll keep talking while my machine catches up, because I think this might be my machine acting goofy. The fill has the backup, so that if you accidentally bleed out into places you didn't mean to, you can simply save and quit, and then replace the MAPX file that you have with the one that it had made as a backup. I think my map header is actually going to crash. Huh. All right, I will relaunch that. I'd been playing with this a little bit earlier today, and it was perfectly stable. And of course, now I make the video and it crashes. Let's go back into that 2020 crisis map. Find roughly the, where was I? I was over by Madagascar. 5. Yeah, so it lost the stuff I was doing. So let me repaint for just a moment. Jungle, large brush, unlock, terrain. Oops. Right click. So if you make big pockets, you can fill with terrain. Now the user was also, who asked about this on Discord, was also talking about the fact that he wanted to be able to fill other things such as battle zone, theater, or the info set. For example, who owns it? That painting ownership can take quite a while. Can you do that? Sort of. The fill bucket can only distribute data where it has made a change to the terrain type. What that means is sometimes you have to fill it with junk, so then you can fill it the way you want. And this is something modders, you'll simply have to play with this a little bit, but I can demonstrate it. That if I was trying to give ownership of this area, I could fill, and I like to use this mountain low. This is a sort of a false terrain type, because mountains are supposed to have elevation, but the way we count out our terrain types, we ended up with a mountain terrain that was invalid. So I'm going to transform all of these into mountain low, which it's colored red to say don't use this terrain type. Now I'm going to make one hex exactly what I want. I want it to be jungle again. I also want it to be block, 3 and owner 12. I don't know what region I just gave it to, but it now has ownership. And I'm going to make it jungle. Oh, I should do this with the single hex. Yeah. Jungle here. Now I want to spread this to everywhere. As long as I change the terrain and turn on the info set, it can do both at once. So terrain is on, info set is on, bucket is now on, and I click here, I have filled that whole thing. Now for filling in the center, I can sort of right click here, paint here, but now I'm going to change that terrain to plains, click, bucket, click. it has given every one of these hexes has the block 3 owner 12. I just created a very large region without having to paint the ownership. So the fill tool is fiddly. It requires some practice to use it the way you want, and you're going to screw things up. That's why we give you a backup. But with the fill function, you can do a lot of stuff in the map editor if you're trying to cover large amounts of ground. I should stop at this point. The video has already been very long, but I hope it's some useful information for everybody in terms of modding. If you want to chat with us about stuff, there's always the Steam forums, our BattleGoat forums, and the Discord. Again, over the summer months moving forward, our team does have lower capacity. Our apologies if we're a little slower to reply, but we will get back to you eventually. Ask your questions, leave them there, and we will see what we can do to answer them. And to all the modders out there, keep creating stuff. Tell us what you've done, what you like about it all. We really appreciate it. And when we have chances to give a little bit of support like this in return, we'll see what we can do. Thanks for watching. I will see you guys next time. Bye.